I would like to welcome to the stage Bill Smith. He is responsible for leading the States of Alaska's Office of Information Technology, managing all enterprise information related resources within the executive branch of the state and providing strategic oversight for the state enterprise systems and infrastructure. He has made significant strides in enabling remote access for employees following the COVID pandemic, drastically reducing cybersecurity vulnerabilities, actively combating the rapid increase in threat activity, and attacking technical debt within the enterprise. He has over 30 years of experience leading all types of teams and sizes, both in the public and private sector. During his successful career in the United States Army, he held senior positions responsible for operational forecasting and national force structure. After retiring from the Army, Bill chose to stay in Alaska and entered the private sector with a major Alaska-based broadband and communications provider. In senior positions there, he worked on technical solutions provided to business, consumers, and government agencies in Alaska. Bill and his wife, Jo, have 3 children, and following his military career, taking them around the globe, they've enjoyed raising their family and making their home in the last frontier. Please join me in welcoming Bill to the stage. Thank you.
So thanks to Brian and Charla and the entire JDC team for inviting me. Trust me, I'll get a little bit to innovation. You're probably not thinking state government is much related to innovation. We'll touch on it. It is important, I think, for us to kind of share what's going on in the state government and also a little bit around Alaska. The intent is to go ahead and cover a couple of quick items, and then we'll open up some Q&A. I do know that we've got some friends and family of state employee, former and current state employees in the audience, so be gentle. I appreciate you guys not calling me out if I'm too far off base on a couple of these things. Before I get rolling, I do want to make a distinction on some of the things that you're going to hear from me versus what you heard in the speaking engagements yesterday. We are really laser focused, and it's obviously AI is a big spectrum. And with the exciting things that we heard about yesterday, there's all kind of really fun and optimistically speaking, some really world-changing, life-changing technologies that are out there and are being developed. What you're going to hear me talk about are things that I consider to be you'll hear the term everyday AI, you'll hear the term practical AI, you'll hear the term AI at scale. Because we're talking about, at the state government, we're talking about how we can bring these technologies to bear to be better stewards of data, to be better service providers to Alaskans of all types, and better enablers for Alaska business. And so that very practical approach is the way that we are focusing, and we're also looking to do it at scale. We're not looking to say, okay, there's 2 or 3 people working on a little tool. That's great, but we want to make sure that we bring it to the largest audience possible within state government to make that impact as we move forward. So you'll hear some of those terms. But before I go into what we're doing, I do want to just have one slide where I talk a little bit about innovation and driving innovation in Alaska. I think it's important to recognize where we've come and where we're going in Alaska from an external factor perspective. In the bio, which I apologize is way too long, there was a comment about me being involved with a telecommunications provider. And years ago when I was with that provider, we used to say Alaska was 5 to 7 years behind America when it came to technology, right? We were 5 to 7 years behind the technical innovations that were going on in the lower 48. No longer the case. And we've seen a big swing over the course of the last several years, both in funding and with access and public and private sector engagement. And it really has enabled us to make up that ground. The big one, the big elephant in the room, broadband connectivity. Traditionally, that's been our largest constraint from a technical perspective in Alaska. But it really has come a long way, and it continues to move forward, both from an innovative technology perspective with LEO constellations covering Alaska just in time for taking care of some fiber failures and some other things that we had and some other challenges. But it continues to grow from a technical perspective. It also continues to grow from an interest and a funding perspective, public and private side. Terrestrial, satellite, all of the above. And that really has made a big difference in the options that we have in Alaska, and allow us to do things like take advantage of the AI technology that's developing around the world. It really does form the backbone of the innovation that we're talking about. It increases cloud access. I'm going to just share within the state government, many of you are probably aware, maybe not, over the course of the last 2 years, we've had a pretty significant cloud migration that we did within the executive branch, that we executed within the executive branch. And I'll brag on our teams a little bit. It was recognized in 2024 by a state technology organization, Statescoop, as a top 50 state IT innovation of the year. That was Alaska. That was Alaska that did it. And Alaska did it because of these changes, because of some of these capabilities, because of an innovation mindset that we have in Alaska. And also, most importantly, I'll get back to this concept when I talk about general innovation. Alaska's got the gift of agility. We can make changes much more rapidly up here than many larger states on a state government perspective, than many organizations around the world. We are really in a wonderful place to be able to innovate the way that we do things. And in that process with that cloud migration, I like to say, just kind of tongue-in-cheek, we were able to prove that, yeah, state government can work with the cloud in Alaska. The digits still flow. The electronics work. The physics prove out. We can do this stuff. So the broadband connectivity has really brought a lot of tools that are being developed in the cloud environments by the major providers to people's fingertips. Along with that, edge computing. There are some really exciting things happening in edge computing around Alaska which help fill the gap and help kind of augment that cloud-based activity that's going on and allow us to really put the right tool to the right job. That kind of pragmatic increase in the tool sets that we have, I think, is really important. As all of these things are happening, the AI tools are becoming more and more available. They're mostly cloud-based. Not all, but they're mostly cloud-based. So these things are important enablers. And as we move forward, I think we'll see more on-premise, more in Alaska-based activity beyond what we see today, which, there's some great things happening in the University of Alaska system and some other things. But I think it's going to continue to grow. And as I said before, a key point here is that Alaska really does have the gift of agility. We can move quickly up here. We've got the administrative support from the state administration. Our governor is extremely friendly towards AI innovation and extremely interested in pushing those tools forward. And then just because of the size of our population and the size of our businesses up here, I think we've got a real opportunity there from an agility standpoint. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the state of Alaska. And the government and what we're doing around artificial intelligence. And as I'm speaking through this, really I'm mostly talking about generative artificial intelligence. As we learned yesterday, there's a wide spectrum and it's been around for a lot of years. We're talking about the emerging capabilities that are coming in the last several years. It's probably no surprise, and I don't think that anyone would expect any different, but we typically have a risk-averse approach in state government. And I think you want us to. We are custodians of your data. We're custodians of a lot of activity and a lot of interesting things that go on in the state. And quite frankly, citizens in many cases don't have a choice. We are a monopoly. And we take the being a good custodian of data very seriously. So as we look at adopting artificial intelligence tools, one of the very first things we focus on is the security of those tools. It's got to be first and foremost with everything that we think about. And when we're thinking about security, it does drive us to the private side tools when we're looking at state data. So on the slide, you'll see off to the right-hand side the big red scary mark about public systems. I don't mean that they are inherently scary. I don't mean that they're not great tools, and we use them around the state government today. But we need to knowingly understand that we can't put any data that should not be in the public domain out there, because that's where they go. And so at the state of Alaska, one of the things that we've really been focusing on is some initial guidance and some initial education with our teams to say, hey, be cognizant of what you're doing and where. If it's one of these public tools, great, I use it all the time. But I also am very careful to say, man, I think I'll put a placeholder here. I think I won't put this data. I'll use it for tools and appropriately. However, that's not going to get us where we need to go. We need to be able to develop the private side of the house, the areas where we have internal security. We can rely on the fact that when we engage data with artificial intelligence tools, it doesn't inform a public tool. It doesn't go to train somebody's big LLM out there. And so the security is an aspect that we're really, really focused on. Risk mitigation is also it's hand in hand. There's a saying among a lot of my peers around the 50 states that if you see one state, you've seen one state. Every state is different, and it's no difference in AI policy in that regime. There are about 50 different approaches among the 50 states in how they're dealing with AI policy. Some have come really forward with some very complex, very comprehensive policy around AI, and they've front-loaded that. We're probably on the other side of that spectrum in that we haven't come up with a bunch of specific AI policies to date. And I think it makes sense why. I'll share that with you. We've taken an approach to say, look, the AI tools that we are going to be using, the AI tools at scale that we're going to be using in the state, at this point are not at the far end of the spectrum. They're not at the far end of the ethical dilemmas that people are working through, and rightly so, in many of these really, really emerging things. They're more of the everyday AI. They're more of the practical AI. And so our primary concern is data security. Are we using the data appropriately? Are we keeping it safe? So we've taken a data focus on the guidance, and we've said, we've got information security policies in the state that apply to how we deal with data. So let's start there. And so we've been reminding our employees, hey, the data is the key. And there's no difference in saying, can I put this data in an email to my friends and family, or can I put this data in ChatGPT on the public side? The question isn't about the AI, the question is about the data. Is it appropriate to be in the public environment? So we've been doubling down in terms of working with our employees to make sure they're thinking about appropriate use of the data, regardless of the technology. We did initiate some initial guidance around AI with some definitions, some education, some rules of the road, how departments can bring AI systems online. But we've really been focused on how we treat that data and trying not to reinvent the wheel, trying to make sure that we cover the responsible use, but we also do it in a way that can kind of grow with this emerging technology. We've been focusing on that enterprise-wide maturity. The other aspect here, and at the bottom, it talks about strategic drivers. I think it's really important, particularly when we're thinking about this enterprise AI tools at scale, to start with the problem. One of the challenges we've had as we're talking with leaders around the state is AI is really cool. And there's some really cool, I don't mean to offend anybody, but I usually call them parlor tricks on the AI side of the house. Hey, look at this. This is really fancy. That's great in terms of giving people an idea of some of the capabilities, but it's not, in my mind, useful for finding practical ways to make people's lives better. And so we've been really focused on talking to our leaders and saying, hey, let's start with your problems. What problems have you not been able to solve with current tools? What are the issues? And then we've been matching that with potential AI tools to say this tool is uniquely suited to solve that problem. We've identified hundreds of use cases across the executive branch, and we've probably got dozens of them right now that are in various proofs of concept where we're aligning them with tools and saying, hey, let's see if we can solve this particular problem with this tool, and then we can go ahead and move it to scale and move forward with it. So we're excited about those, but we really wanted to focus on the problems and not the technology right up front, because the technology is very broad. As we look at the technology, I find it useful to group it and say, okay, what kind of things are we talking about? Because AI is one of those things that's really easy to get lost in the conversation. So we take a look at it and we say, let's group it into end user AI. What is something that is an AI tool that every employee potentially could benefit from? And then we say next step up is probably a developer AI, where you need to be a developer in order to put these tools together, to rack them, stack them, build services that we can use. And then on the far right-hand side is the custom build. The state of Alaska right now is firmly focused on the left two columns. There are no big LLMs being built by the state of Alaska at this point. And when I say state of Alaska, executive branch, at this point. I think it's going to come. We're going to get down that road, and we're preparing for it by knowing what questions to ask as we get those proposals coming to us. But really, we're focused on, as I said, the enterprise AI tools that are here today and that we can scale to large groups. So I don't want to disappoint anybody, but this is literally the last slide. So hopefully we get there's some time for some questions or for some networking, but I will spend a little bit of time on this slide. As I said, we're looking to scale AI tools and make a difference in everything that we do. As such, we really started to focus on what tools do we have available today. Not that I have to go out and buy, not that I have to go and develop, not that I have to give the major providers a call and say, hey, I want a 5-year, $20 million project. What can I use today? We've been very lucky in the state of Alaska because for the last several years, we've been focused on innovating the way that we do IT. The cloud migration was a great example. As part of that cloud migration, we had to build a cloud environment. We had to create governance. We had to build security. We had to build an area for each department of government to have its own subscription and protect its own data. Department of Health data cannot be accessible by Department of Corrections, for instance, and those types of issues. And so we did that legwork in our cloud environment. Lo and behold, the major partners are putting AI tools in the same place. So we've already got a lot of applications and servers that are in a cloud environment where the AI tools are. It makes it a lot easier for us to start moving into the proof of concept phase, to start building these things out. So we really focused on what problems can we solve with our tools that we have today. And that's the effort that we've been focused on over the course of the last year. As I go down that list, end user AI, and I want to apologize if I start talking about vendors and all that kind of stuff. All of the major vendors have amazing tools. I'm going to be talking about some of the names of the ones that we are currently using. It does not mean that there aren't others that are equally effective and appropriate for various organizations. On the end user level, though, we're really talking about those things that people can put on their desktop every single day and make their day better and make them more effective. And better quality of life, better retention, better efficiency, being able to get more done and then free up their time to do even more for the state. Think about that in terms of office software assistant, Copilot. Microsoft 365 Copilot is the tool that we have access to in our environment. It was just at the end of the year provided within the government commercial space, the government commercial cloud. Has a couple higher level audits and things like that around security. We're going to be piloting that here within just a couple of weeks with several hundred Alaska State employees and really digging in to say, let's document the way you're doing things today. Let's provide you a good quality education on these tools, best practices, and then let's document the difference. The intent is at the end of that pilot, we can go to leadership and say, hey, here's where it's worth it. We've got to respect the fact that we're state government. We don't have a lot of money. And we don't want to waste any. So we don't want to just give licenses for this stuff out just because, well, it might help somebody. Well, I think in the commercial space, a lot of folks have found that there's probably I've heard anywhere from 10 to 25% real take rate in terms of value with some of these tools. So we want to identify it up front and say, these are the roles where you can really get some benefit and let our leaders decide where to put their money. Our governor has submitted in the governor's budget, this year has submitted a request for funding for about 2,000 of these licenses across state government. Again, hopefully informed by this pilot so that we put them in the right places, but it will start us down that path of getting our employees these tools to make their lives easier, help them provide better services. The professional user AI, that's kind of that low code, no code. When we talk about professional, we're not thinking about IT professionals, we're thinking about accountants, and we're thinking about scientists, and we're thinking about various other functional areas in the government who know what they need, they know what data they have. Can they configure low-code, no-code tools in order to access that with, and use AI to really improve the way that they do things? So in our world, in our Microsoft environment that we have today, Think about Copilot Studio, if you're familiar with that. They can go in and they can build these various tools. We are right now doing some interesting chatbots, and pardon me, I think it's interesting, you probably won't care. Things like information security policy chatbot. We always have concerns about people, do the information security policies make sense to anybody? Not IT people, but real people. Does it make sense? We've got a chatbot that we've built. You can ask natural language questions. It will say, hey, can I use my computer for this? And it'll say, yeah, you can, and here's your references, and it'll tell them in plain language, or no, you can't. The importance of that, it's a good little use case, but the importance of that is we've built a template which we can now pick up and drop on any data set internal to the state, and employees can have a natural language conversation around a data set. The thing was put together in about 2-3 weeks, and it's taken much longer for us to kind of test it and make sure that it's working well, and we're getting ready to put it onto our website for our internal employees' use here within the next few weeks. So that's an example of some of those. And there's a bunch of those going on around the executive branch. The next one is kind of where you start to get really interesting, and that's the developer AI. That's where you do need some developer skills. You need some AI skills. Quite frankly, we're maturing that in the state government. We don't have it to the extent we need it. So for the developer use cases, we are still using our environment. We're using our cloud environment where the tools are, but we're getting partners. And we're saying, hey, this company who's an expert in AI, which means they've been doing it for 6 months, they are going to come in and kind of help us build these tools out. Those use cases really start to get interesting because I'll just give you kind of 3 quick examples. Any business owners here might appreciate this. Permitting, state permitting, can be a nightmare. We've got some really dedicated Alaska employees who are saying we need to use AI to make that better, make it faster, make it more efficient. So what can AI do? Well, AI can probably read applications, make sure that they're complete before we ever occupy a state employee in doing that initial review. Not making a decision, but just saying, hey, does it have everything we need? Can it provide a little summary so that the employee can get a head start about where they need to really dig in? So that's one example that has gotten a lot of play, and we've got some proofs of concept that are starting to stand up. Another one is historical records, and this is one that just fascinates me. I'm a bit of a history geek. We've got a lot of handwritten field notes from geologists. We've got a lot of original documents from the state of Alaska history. We've got the archives that have all kind of stuff. AI can read that. AI can not only read it, but it can pull the data out and put it in a retrievable manner and make it available to the public or state employees or whoever the right audience for that data is. And we've seen some really optimistic starts around that area. And then another one that I think is a little bit more opaque at this point, but I think it's got some real promise, is resource analysis. Pointing AI tools at data from all over the state to be able to let people know where the resources are, what is the state, how do you get a hold of those resources, are they something that can be developed, are they not, what is the potential for planning, all of those things. We are in a position where we can build those tools with what we have today. They're not going out and getting a multi-million-dollar contract. It's probably in the tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars right now while we're using partners, but ultimately, hopefully we can bring some of that skill set inside. And we can do those things, which allows us to provide better services to Alaskans, to Alaskan businesses. And as important in my mind, a better quality of life to our state employees who are, they're hustling. They are working hard. There's a lot of work, generally not a lot of resources behind it. And this allows them to free up what they're doing and have a little better quality of life. So I think it's got a real retention aspect to it as well. The last column on there on the previous slide that I won't necessarily talk about here is that custom-built AI. It's coming. I see it coming. I don't see it being scalable just yet within the state government, and I think people can probably recognize that that makes sense. But as developments outside of state government continue to move forward, we're going to see more and more opportunities for some really, really unique applications that we're going to then be going forward and working through. And at that point, I do think that we're going to need to continue to have discussions around policy and things like that to be sure that we're not getting ahead of ourselves. But I do really think it's going to be some fascinating outcomes as we start to get into some of those custom pieces. Again, not my focus today. My focus today is we've got this stuff in place today. We have it licensed today. We can go and we can run, and we're doing that. We've got several dozen proofs of concept. There are some things that are popping up in our websites and things like that that are natural language chatbots and stuff. You're going to see more of those types of things. It's going to be more common. But I do think that the opportunity for enterprise AI at scale is here, and we're taking full advantage of it. So with that, again, fast and furious. If there's any questions, certainly willing to take any questions anyone might have. I also want to recognize our Deputy CIO, Neil Smith, is in the back corner. Please feel free to ping him. Native Alaskan. He grew up in Dillingham. He's got some great Dillingham stories if anyone wants to hear any of those. Super technically gifted, and he was the leader on our cloud migration program, and also he is leading the hunt on our AI implementation. So a great resource. He's going to be on a panel directly following this as well. But that being said, I appreciate you giving me just a couple minutes. We are always available for more conversations, but if anyone has any questions, I can field them now, or we can yield some time. All right. I think we're good. Thanks so much. Bye.